Good morning. It's still morning. It's January 2020, and I wanted to get on here and start talking about just what's happening in America in regards to the public education system for African American people, and just what is public education? How do we see it? It's really kind of difficult. I don't think we ever really think about what public education is because simply it's not a process in which we participated in the creation of. But we do have access. And I remember all of the time that I was involved in what was going on in school for my children simply because I was in a situation where I had the time because I had been put on workers' comp and then lost my job and then, always trying to go through a transition of supporting my children and figuring life out. But then I had all of that time to go and figure out why my sons were struggling in the situation of an opportunity to learn, because that's how we see it. What is a free and appropriate public education? Just what is a FAPE? I don't believe that we all understand what that means, but compulsory education in America is mandated throughout the 50 states. And believe me, No Child Left Behind and Leave No Child Behind. And let's see, Goals 2000 were Goals 2000 and 2000 goals and objectives so that every American could have an opportunity to be a successful American. And then there was, what is the last one? The NCLB. There was NCLB, and then there's the LCAP in California. And then there's Every Child Succeed Act with Obama. And I don't think that there is anything with this current president or this current administration because they're busy trying to figure out how they can have rural areas and rural communities have access to that federal money. All that federal money that we are all paying because we all pay taxes. But in areas where there's a lot of people, that's where the federal money is coming back to. And it helps to support the states in the efforts of educating those children. That's how the system kind of works. The system does work. It's not broken. It's only broken when you fail to show up. And as a people, Black people have never really, well, I can't say never. I need to take that back because Dale's always telling me, take that back, darling. There's a lot of us out here, and there is a lot of us out here working to strive to advocate for others. But the major problem is the major organizations that are in place to do advocacy are not advocating for us. They're advocating for themselves so that they can make some relevance and stay in, kind of like stay in the game. But everybody does. It's important to stay in the game. It's important to get paid, especially once you commit yourself to an avenue or a process that's happening. You kind of fight for that to continue. But the problem is when it's not working, what do you do? And when it's not working, as it's not working today, because the education system is simply broken. I'm getting on here and I'm talking because, I've always talked a little bit. I've always gotten a little bit pissed off and figure out that I needed to vent. I needed to explain myself, but I don't have a problem doing this in public. I learned to do this in front of a group of people. So I'm not ashamed about sharing my thoughts. This is not a private situation. This is a situation that we're all forced to live in. We're all forced to live under this system where we have to accept somehow the fact that African Americans were never really had the ability to evolve, to the point to where they're doing only self-advocacy in their own community, and they're working in their own community to ensure that relevant things to Black people are continued. And that other people are not discussing what needs to happen for us, but we're actually discussing what needs to happen for our own children. And that our children are actually taught the truth about American history and who we are as a people, or about American history as it is today, because I have a history too in America. My name is on some of those papers in California where I signed as a parent to participate in the DAC, where I was a parent who went to some of the conferences. I was one of the parents, I was the only parent, I believe, that when James Sweeney took all the administrators to Texas to see the small schools model, I was a parent, he flew me there. And I enjoyed every bit of it. And then when I came back, I worked with other parents who had involved themselves in the conversation of what change could possibly happen. And that engagement happened in the community. But we're living in communities now where you can't engage, no matter where you live, because the engagement is a circle of people who are not experiencing life because they're not participating. They're just going to meet and talk about their limited perception as to what is going on from it's like a voyeur. They're just watching life happen, but they're not participating in life. Because when they show up to talk about what's going on for you, they want you to tell them so they can tell your story. Well, guess what? Your story is yours to tell. So when white people write a book, I don't care what the book is about. They write it and they promote it and they sell it. And then other people say, yeah, I kind of feel that way. But knowledge comes from experience. And experience comes from trial and error, whatever. And we go through trials and tribulations in life. And the spiritual guide is your walk and your journey and your willingness to walk this journey, irregardless of what life dumps on you. You just have to get up and keep it going, because that's your journey in life. That's your faith and your belief. That's what you believe. And that is spiritual. So I truly believe that we as a people can represent failure because we have the inability to communicate that we are aware as a people that services are not benefiting the Black children. And we attempt to reach out or attempt to engage. And there's no process which has been established across America. Now, this is mind-blowing. There's not a process established across America, all of the states, in which we can advocate for change in our local communities. We're struggling and having few people get online. And then when I start following them, then all of a sudden they're tearing each other down, can't go there. Because this is not about an individual. This is about what's happening around us and how we actually participate. Well, let's talk about parent participation. Let's talk about back to school night and the limited participation that people actually engage. And when I got to high school, they said, well, darling, your kids probably don't want you here. And I said, you know what? It's not about what they want. It's about what I'm going to ensure happens for them. So I was there every day. And I was blessed to have the ability to be there every day. I took my son, Tyler, lunch every day because he wouldn't eat the food because he had a sensitivity in his mouth because of the reverse thrush, whatever. His tongue goes back different ways. And he's very sensitive because he has epilepsy. But he's a brilliant kid. And he's my son. And he was going to get everything he was entitled to. And because he communicated very well with me, it didn't matter how he communicated with them. Because I was there to ensure that they did understand what they needed to give to him. And boy, it was a wonderful journey, I can say. My journey with Tyler ensured that I understood the level of engagement that every human has to have to preserve their legacy. As we're talking about legacy building, we're talking about ensuring that families are able to ensure that when they produce, children, that their children have an opportunity to access a dream, and that people are not coming in here just because they have money in the world to control services that happen for you as an individual. It's so important, the voting. that we never really appreciated because we were basically being denied access to vote. I mean, it's been a struggle, this struggle to have a voice in what's happening for you as an individual is a real thing. And by the time you get to the point to where you say, well, wait a minute, I'm just out here working and paying taxes and working and paying taxes, and my kids are in school, and just like Kaepernick said, you want me to be out here and entertain you when I can't assure myself that my son would be driving in a car and wouldn't be pulled over and murdered by law enforcement who are really only required to have an 8th grade level education. But you still don't, you want me to stand to allegiance when I can't even bring attention to our people and the need for our people and the hurt in our community when our children are basically not educated and undereducated. And then how law enforcement deals with undereducated people is to redirect them. And how this country has come unhinged with the willful defiance issue. And how somehow willful defiance has become the offer of FAPE for Black children in the public education system. Check yourself. I say check yourself because it's not happening. I say check yourself because I, as an individual, have attempted to advocate for children and had the inability to even have a conversation as to what the expectation would be in the classroom, because failure is truly the option. How do we just allow a system to totally fail a whole race of people and then accept that we have the talented 10 or the less than 10 or 15% that actually narrowly escape through to have a basic life? And so what, we have people who are millionaires, but guess what? They ain't got time for you. You know, Snoop says, I'm living my best life. And he is living his best life because he's entertaining everywhere. He's meeting kings and people that you couldn't even imagine. And we're supporting that shit. But let's talk about the oversight of the money that he's paying for taxes, because he pays some taxes. Wesley Snipes pays taxes. Shit, Wesley went to jail, didn't he? For tax evasion. Who hasn't been to jail for tax evasion when you really start thinking about it? Jill Scott, okay, I don't know. I heard there were some tax problems with her. I heard there's some tax problems with a whole lot of entertainers and entertainers that have gone, tax problems. But when we talk about the money that's paid in taxes, we act as if the entertainment capital that's being generated by Black people somehow should not affect the quality of life that young, new babies would have access to, because their parents somehow is undereducated also. The undereducation and the degradation of the Black community simply because we are Black has to end. And it ends today, actually. It ends whenever you, as an individual, decides to step up and say, no more. I don't know what else to do. I am so struggling. The young man that I was attempting to provide support for, that I realized that he was not having access to any educational services. And because he had been failed a long time ago, and we had fought for any opportunity to measure the benefit or the maintenance of his special education plan. And then all of a sudden, some of the same issues that he was dealing with, because he was communication handicapped. They said he was intellectually disabled. They said he was in the spectrum of autism. All these identifications of his disability happened within the last 2 years. But then there was an issue that could have had to do with his disability. But guess what? There was no manifestation hearing. There was nothing. There was no contact to the parent. There was nothing. The child was arrested the day before he turned 18. And was unhinged. I typed everyone I could think of. I communicated with everyone I could think of, because how could this student be arrested and for an issue that supposedly suspectedly happened in early September? But then they got him in December, the day before he turned 18. And the mother was notified and told that they weren't going to release him until he turned 19. Now this boy generates a check that helps to provide support for the family. And I was unhinged, because simply, how would that have ever happened if the boy truly had special education services that were benefiting him, that were measurable? And how could that have happened at the school site and everyone not been involved? And how could that have happened? Truly, because the boy we couldn't measure any of the services that happen for the student as long as he's been an enrolled student in Sacramento City Unified School District. Special ed, 5th grade level, 12th grade. And until we demanded that we had outside assessors and assessments to determine where the student really was, still at 5th grade level in the 12th grade. And only because we had the outside assessments, only because we could document it with outside evaluators that are being paid outside of the district to determine the level of education. Was the district willing to change his diagnosis again and list him as autistic in the spectrum somewhere? They changed his diagnosis. And then they pulled him out of regular ed, where he was going to get a high school diploma, a regular high school diploma. And they put him on a vocational track, and then they didn't implement a vocational plan because they said he needed to be a behavior modification plan, but they didn't follow through with the behavior modification plan. They just didn't do anything. And then, like I said, what was so smooth is they came and arrested him the day before he turned 19. Now, I think I raised enough stink, and the mother raised enough stink, that we could have the child released, but they released him with an ankle monitor. So the boy remains at home. But what the kicker is here is that when the mother sent over the notification that she had the ability to advocate for her son because he was in special ed and he had given her permission, she was informed by the director of special education that the child had been disenrolled. Disenrolled, no longer a student in Sac City, and that she would have to go to the hearing office to get him re-enrolled in a program. Now I want to ask you a question. How in the hell did all that happen so smoothly? And how is that the only thing that happens in Sac City for African American children who are so far below grade level when they transition to high school, that they have some kind of agreement going on? Now this is pimping. They have an agreement with the juvenile hall that they can come and get your special ed student, and they don't have to notify you of anything. So there is no mandates to meet any of the federal, the special education regulations. Absolutely none. There is no maintenance of effort through special ed in Sacramento City Unified School Districts. That's why they got that lawsuit going on. But the lawsuit just barely touches the edges of the dysfunction and the lack of oversight and the lack of management that happens in Sac City Unified School District, where we have such a high rate of suspension and expulsion for African Americans. And then to move to Clark County, Nevada, and understand that they have a 256% suspension rate or expulsion rate for higher than any other ethnic group for Black people. And to ask myself, as a Black American who understands the responsibility of personal responsibility, because I have been oppressed enough. I've had enough bad things happen to me in regards to the way the system just assumes that they make a choice that you have no personal rights. And then they just ignore you. I have worked with the Justice Reform Coalition for a number of years, and we've successfully filed complaints through the process of the complaint process. But when it comes down to implementation, it comes right back down to the local district. And everything is about local control. What do people understand about local control? Black people understand nothing about local control. They pay taxes, yes. There are a few people that are elected that are African American people, but they may do their jobs, but they go home after they get off of their job. I don't care if they've been elected, they're doing the job, and that's all they're doing. They're not going out there trying to educate the people. And the problem is the Black people did not come in to the system generating and participating and engaging and in the oversight process of the public monies that is paid into the community by Black people. And every time we start talking about the failed services and people run to throw some money in this area, but with no accountability. Just look at all that money we gave them and they squandered it. I'm talking about outcomes. I'm talking about measurable outcomes and measurable objectives to monitor the benefit of the public school system on the Black people. Because guess what? My children are educated, even my last one. Yep. And I can be proud that he's educated. And I can understand that the system would eat him up out there if he had been out there by himself. He wouldn't have been a successful student. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to engage people any further than what I'm willing to do. People have to tell their own stories. Everybody has to tell their own story, and then they have to stand up and choose what they're willing to do and what they're willing to sacrifice. It's not a sacrifice because guess what? You're born and then you die. If you do nothing in between to mark your journey, then you leave nothing behind. Because anything you generate in this world, you can't take it with you. But it is certainly past time that we start talking about the failed public services that are provided to African American children and the tenacity of people when they choose to monitor and regulate others' behaviors and how they can just kill, murder blatantly Black people and have no consequence to that and have no conversation about that and actually go to trial and win, not having to have a penalty. And who are we as a people in America to say that we shouldn't have a thought about it? I think about it consistently. My sister said, oh, girl, you need to chill out and think about something else. I think this white hair tells you that I think about it consistently because I'm concerned. Even though I'm not a grandmother yet, I am concerned for my nieces and nephews, that they have an opportunity to engage in a system that's equitable, and that they have the ability to sustain life for themselves and their children and their children's children, and that the society looks at us as we have the ability to critique and participate in the oversight process of public services that are aligned to support people who look like us, and that we have a voice in the management of the funding. And if it ain't working, that we have a right to say it ain't working and that we need to change something. But when you can identify failure and say, oh, that's just failure of those people, because you know who those people are. I don't know who those people are. I'm not one of those people. I'm one of these people. I'm one of these people that says that education matters. I'm one of these people that say that becoming lifetime learners is critical. I'm one of these people that say that if you don't use it, you lose it. So I'm using the level of knowledge that I have to share with others about what public school systems really are all about. Now let's talk about when we pay those taxes and what public policy really is. Public policy is the governance of the funding that comes back to support the community and how that community is all affected, and then how they allocate money back and how they count the census and people are all counted and they get extra money for certain people. And then they have to be accountable to how that extra money for certain people is allocated and spent. So therefore, we either can have government processes that oversee those services to the public, or we can have contracted services to people who receive those services. But anyways, when the money comes back, then we determine how much the state is going to spend and how much the county is going to spend and how much we're generating in the tax revenue and how much we have investors to do. But anyways, we're running a city here. And when we run a city, we're supposed to be equitable and ensure that everyone has access. Well, when I look at the inability to access just the mere conversation about the failure, then it kind of makes me livid. I have to pray about it because I should have the ability to critique it, and I don't have to run down there and talk to those people and get before them and share my little 2 minutes because they won't get on the phone with me and have a conversation with me. They won't set a meeting and have a meeting with me. They don't want to. I mean, I've met with Mike Barton, Dr. Mike Barton and CCSD, and met with him on more than one occasion. But guess what? We have no solutions. It's just been me and him, and I'm just sharing information with him, and I don't have a problem sharing information with anyone. Because this is the information that I learned how to gather over the last, since I ever had children. And my oldest one is going to be 36 tomorrow. And I am going to be still 61. And I consider myself to be blessed and highly favored. And I'm going to tell you that no matter what we do, we have to act on what we've been given. And what we've been given is the blessing and the knowledge of what life has created opportunities for you to do and experience. So back to, having that conversation with that administrator and going to the public meetings. I attended board meetings for more than 20 years. And then I was on committees too. I served as the chair of the District Advisory Committee for Title I and compensatory funding for the state of California for Sac City Unified School District. Then I served on the Family Alliance for Community Partnerships under West Ed for the state of California. And then I was a VISTA, and I was a VISTA for the Rural California Housing and Development Agency. I mean, I've had some great opportunities. I was an emerged candidate in 2009. And I ran for a school board too. And didn't win, but I did get some votes. And that's the most important thing. But it really doesn't matter because I still showed up. Nothing prevents you from showing up in your children's lives. And we all have personal responsibility to do that. That's called showing up. And when we show up, we need to understand that it's just not just the one person. We have to build capacity. And I'm doing these little blurbs to try to share when everybody gets a minute to check in, to share with someone else. Because how else do we build capacity? How else do we unite? How else do we come together? Because quite frankly, the organizations that represent our people represent themselves. They're not representing the people. Because if they were representing the people, there's no way in hell that there would be such a willful defiance issue, rampant across the United States for Black folks, because Black folks can't seem to manage themselves. I mean, I don't know what else to say. You go through an education system to educate yourself so that you can be functional in America. But for some reason, Black people cannot. On the whole, Black folks are just uneducatable. I remember I seen this little boy, and he was over there in the Success Academy, and I said, "What are you doing?" out of school. This is time for you to be in school. He says, I'm homeschooled. And I said, yeah, you are. Exactly what you are, homeschooled. There are so many alternative programs here in Clark County. Alternative, and then you come get a voucher, or you come to their program. I mean, they're harvesting. Everybody get to participate in the game. Because if you give somebody some money, they have to have some outcomes for that money that you're giving them, even if it's not something that's successful or it sustains life, and sometimes you just get a break. Life shouldn't just be about getting a lucky break. It should be about what you can invest in yourself so that you can have an outcome in life and what you're willing to invest. But first, you need to know that you're in the game, that you're playing the game. And you're not here in America. Black people are just not playing the game. We don't have a team to play on. I've been trying to find a team so I can join. And I've joined lots of little teams, lots of little silos, lots of little groups. And I listened. And I worked with organizations, and I showed up as the Black person in the room. And even if I'm the only Black person in the room, I've got lots of videos where I was the only Black person in the room, sharing my concern. So I've shared concerns for years. I understand how to share concerns. What I don't get is, where's the team? I want to be on Team ADOS USA. I want to be on that team where I can talk about, well, let's look at the data, because the data tells everything. Let's check out what the data says. And if the data says you don't have the ability to provide access to all children, well, then guess what? That's where I want to start. I want to start where you're not providing services. I want to start changing some things so that we can measure some benefit. And we're not measuring the retirement benefit for the people who've been doing it for a long time. So anyways, did not silence my calls. And so I'm going to sign up for now, and I'll be back.